Jezabeth, we have the seniors and the sophomores from the photography and video program at PCAD here. That's who's joining us today.
Wait, am I frozen?
No, you're not.
Okay,
Can you
I'm
hear?
frozen
Okay.
on my computer, but that's okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. All right. So I'll take just a moment to say a very brief welcome to Jezabeth Gonzalez and tell you that she graduated in 2017 from PCAD. She was in my digital imaging program or class when she was a freshman. And I think it was the first class that I taught, as well as the first class you were taking at PCAD, right? You're a freshman.
With a broken leg.
With a broken leg. So she was coming in like a wheel. It wasn't just a broken leg. You had a wheelchair and you had to be in like a lying down position.
Yes.
It was very dramatic. And even with a broken leg and a wheelchair in the lying down position, she immediately was like, this isn't going to stop me. And every assignment she went out and did with like so much passion, and the broken leg did not get in her way. She would go out and take pictures. It was like amazing that she would go to places that you wouldn't imagine someone in a wheelchair with a broken leg could go to. I think you had someone helping you.
Mm-hmm.
And so you had them like wheel you wherever you needed them to. And then really quickly, I thought like even freshman year, you were coming to me outside of class for extra feedback and critique, and you already wanted to know about grad school and residencies and how you could continue getting better. And you were constantly looking for ways to continue growing and grow your artistic practice. And you were looking at artists on your own, which was really exciting for me as a teacher to like be able to have those conversations with you. And then that continued for 4 years, and you had huge opinions and you made amazing art. And every project you worked really hard on. I feel like I remember how long you worked on the video that you showed. Did you show that at your thesis for your thesis?
Yeah,
you worked
probably
all
like
year.
a year. Yeah.
Yeah. For an entire year, you were editing a video and continually going back to it and improving it. And I feel like you've just treated every project I've ever seen you work on like that. And I imagine the work that you're doing now is no different. And Jezabeth, after leaving PCAD, went on to the University of Southern Florida, right, in Tampa, which she's going to tell you more about. So I'll let her do the talking there. And then recently, she's received a fellowship, and all of a sudden, the organization is
the Dallas. The
Dallas.
Yeah, the
Yes.
Dallas Foundation.
The Dallas Foundation, and I'm excited for her to share a little bit about that and her experience with you on that. But it's a really big honor to have received, which is exciting. And it's an honor that you've decided to come back and share with us today. And I will leave it at that. And you are going to tell us. I asked her to share a little bit about what she was doing at PCAD to get us started, and then from there share with her the projects that she worked on after that and that she's working on now. So I will hand the mic over and turn my mic off to Jezabeth. Thank you very much.
Oh my God, now I'm kind of nervous. First I wanted to say that my dog might bark. So if he does, I'll just mute myself because his bark is like too much. And I just saw my neighbor, so he might bark if he hears my neighbor go in. But also, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to just kind of be back at PCAD and share my work and my process with everyone. And I know that when I'm sharing my screen, I can't really see anyone. So if anyone has any questions or you need like some sort of explanation, please don't hesitate to ask in the moment, and I'll just pause my presentation and we can talk about things. So is it present now for sharing?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Can you see my screen? All right.
Yes, we can.
All right. And then I'm just going to put present. Hello, everyone. I'm Jezabeth, And just to tell you a little bit about my current practice right now, I am a multidisciplinary maker working with video, photography, land, transportation, and live plants through installation. But then I guess I should start with, oh, wait, oh no, wait, oops, sorry. Okay, sorry, can you see this?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, awesome, thank you. So I wanted to start with my thesis at PCAD called Remedio Casero, which means home remedies. And I think my thesis started on my third or like towards the end of my second year in undergrad. And that's when I started traveling home and documenting my family. I moved from Puerto Rico to Lancaster when I was 21, and I honestly don't really remember what year that was because I'm really bad with time and like birthdays and anything that has to do with numbers. But I'm 32 now, so and I went to PCAD as what I considered myself an adult, and I was around a lot of people that were a little bit younger and also had a lot of knowledge within like art. And like Julia said, and I said, I started with a broken leg, no previous art background or education, and just sort of kind of like trying to keep up with everyone else, I guess. And when I started documenting my family and traveling back and forth, I started with medium format and then my thesis, which was large format. Uh, very extensive, difficult trips to make with a large format camera. And the left is my sister, my nephew, and my grandpa. And on the right is my sister and my grandma. While I was at PCAD and living in Lancaster and sort of traveling to Puerto Rico, I felt sort of this like connect and disconnect between these two lands. So part of my thesis was like to visually make a connection between two different landscapes. On the left is a road to my aunt's house, and on the right is a park closer to the Turkey Hill factory. I think that might be like Conestoga in Lancaster, just for location. And I really just kind of was interested in how these two places were attached to myself, and at the same time, how did I find myself in these two places? So I rarely photographed in the city. I mostly like photographed in like more rural Lancaster because that's where I felt that there was a connection between the land and the photographs of my land, and honestly just like myself in general. While documenting my family, I also documented my friends. Bonnie on the right, who is my best friend, and I actually met at PCAD, and Eric, who was my roommate, and also I met at PCAD. And I would kind of make these pairings between the people here and the people back home. So on the left, you would see my sister and my sister-in-law. Yeah, and then just kind of like trying to make these connections. At times they were kind of forced, and I don't know that they make a whole lot sense in a way, but at the same time, I felt like it was like a necessary thing to do because I kind of felt myself like in between like two different cultures. And then ultimately, my friend traveled with me to Añasco, which is my hometown, and sort of like the blending of culture, people, perspectives just took a different type of avenue, I would say, because then people were in each other's space. And this is my grandmother, and this is her she's very proud of this tree and these flowers, and my best friend is lying underneath the tree. I want to also share like some of the things that I like to look at, as in like influence or just like narrative. This is a still from El Laberinto del Fauno, which is Pan's Labyrinth. Is one of my favorite movies and probably something that I watched a lot while I was working in my thesis because the character, she kind of goes through this all of this like tumultuous like trauma and this journey in order to find her family. And there's something about the narrative in this movie, the way the character has to deal with like all these like situations that I really felt a connection with. And I don't think I necessarily felt connected to a lot of the artists that I was looking at the time. But like movies are a place where I think I find a lot of either like internal references or just sort of like narrative connections. Latoya Ruby Frazier is one of my favorite photographers, and I was actually able to see her do a lecture at SBE in Lancaster. And after, not just like after seeing her work, but also after hearing her talk about her work, I understood that photographs weren't just like the still image, and they were a connection to land, a connection to family, and a lot of research. I don't know if you guys are very familiar with Latoya's work, but it is so intertwined with research. I don't know. It was really overwhelming as a undergrad to just like see her practice and think like, oh, I want a practice like that. And also still as a person that's not in school anymore, like being committed to that amount of research. Another artist was Molly Madeline. And I think now she does a lot of more commercial work, but at the time she was a student at SVA, and I liked to look at other students' work because I wasn't really sure what other people outside of like, I guess like my school or like PCAT were making. I was really curious. So I started looking at other students, and I knew that some of the professors taught in other schools, and that's how I kind of navigated like, oh, who are the other people that they're teaching, and like maybe who are the other people that are either active students there or like recently graduated, and like what did they make, because I was really curious. And also Vivian Fu is another artist. I think Molly Madeline and Vivian Fu are both based in LA, but they both went to SVA either at the time that I was an undergrad or like a little bit before me. And I mean, I really like how I thought that their images were um, not like they weren't student work, but I felt like they were like really like developed, and I was like, okay, I want to be that student. At PCAD, became interested in different multidisciplinary approaches, but I wasn't really sure how to fully develop that. So this is a print of me as a child that I sort of edited and used my hair to make like this phrase. And it said, I don't know who I am, because I think at the time I was kind of dealing with a lot of disconnect, but I was also interested in other things that weren't just like strictly photography, but exploring that was really tricky. I started the video class, and the video class was really the way that it worked out. I think I did really well, and I loved appropriation. Um, I was fascinated with quinceañeros, and I never had a quinceañero, which I think is why I was fascinated with it. But at the same time, quinceañero for me meant like growing up. So I made a lot of videos with appropriation that focused on quinceañeros. So here's a still of one of the videos, and here's another still. It really allowed me to explore either tensions or connections in family without being necessarily close in the same space with my family, and kind of really resolved a lot of like personal tensions that I had even with my own culture. At the time, a video artist that I was looking at is Patty Chang, and this is a video that she has with her mom and her dad that is played in reverse, and it looks like they're kissing and crying, but they're sharing an onion. And I thought it was really kind of unique and kind of strange approach to work with family. And at the same time, I thought it was like a really beautiful video. Like, and I heard a lecture about Patty Chang, or a lecture where Patty Chang or someone like talked about this video, and then just like, what are the ideas of closeness to family? And I really wanted to see like, yeah, what are all of these approaches to making work with family? Even if I wasn't going to remake these videos, I wanted to know like what other people are making. Patty Chang is probably one of my favorite video artists. And another work is Frances Allies, or Frances Alice, and this is If Faith Could Move Mountains. I think that's what it is. And it has like, I don't know if it's 500 or 1,500 people on the top of this mountain, where they are all shoveling together at the same time the sand. And there's uh, there's this thing that I read at, I think like there's a gallery that owns this piece, and they talked about how collective unity is how things happen in Latin America. And I thought it was really interesting that he would make this work because he's from Belgium, but I think he lives in Latin America. And just also the the idea that all these people work together to kind of move a mountain in theory. I don't know, it's really beautiful. And so I find myself between all of these artists that have kind of prepared their own different little stage for internal social, political, and cultural views, and at the same time, like a type of intimacy. So thinking about my work, I really jump around many interests, and there's not like one thing that I can say that like holds me. Am I good? Is everyone seeing this? Am I talking too fast?
You're doing great.
Okay.
Oh, but
Just want to.
one thing, Jezabeth, maybe not everyone knows what a quinceañero is.
Oh yeah, quinceañero is a grandiose birthday party when you are 15, and it is basically a reintroduction to the world where you are now a woman. And I was against this my entire life, and I think as a maybe form of like resistance to my family, I asked them that for my quince I would go to Disney, because I didn't want to grow up in a way, and I didn't want to be introduced to the world as a woman overnight. Like I felt like that was like a violation of my privacy, and also like, why does anyone needs to celebrate this or whatnot? But then at the same time, as an adult, I found myself kind of wanting these moments that I found in a lot of these videos. So there's like this like push and pull between like, okay, well, I didn't want a quinceañero, but I wish I would have had these moments with my family. And a lot of these moments are for the family. And in the appropriated video, a lot of the moments are when the quinceañera and her parents are doing the main dance and crying together. So let's just say that I'm like an emo quinceañera. Is it okay to move on?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So my work ultimately focuses on my family. this long distance relationship that we've had for now 11 to 12 years. The changes that happen between that distance, both in part within the different places that we are, and even like family dynamics, age, new people in the family, and either trying to stay connected or maneuvering like the ups and downs. So since I moved to the US, my dad passed away of AIDS. My mom got cancer. My brother joined the military, and my sister had 2 kids. And that is a lot of things to just process. And I think my work, in a way, serves as a form of unpacking and like rebuilding. There is this text from Marigol, who was a poet, and I translated it to English. But if there's anything that describes my relationship to my land and everything that I've ever known, it's this text. And it says, Amigo, esto duele, my friend, this hurts. Puerto Rico is a swollen bullet between my chest. It's something that hurts me, that rips my sprouts. Because of it, I am 300 light bulbs of disillusion. I used to have a field of fronds, a yellow beam that would move across my pompadour, but I was rhetoric and blind. I was a globe of gas with an adorned sombrero. I was a parrot in splendor. Back then, I didn't have a line across my forehead. Oh, yes. Nor a buzzing cricket in my brain. And this text actually was shared by my friend Natalia, and I felt so attached to it. I have it on my phone, and I probably read it once a week. So thank you, Natalia. Welcome to grad school. I'm showing this because I just, grad school to me felt like this brand new place where I could explore new things, and I wasn't attached to making the work that I had been making in undergrad. And I thought, like, this is a brand new me. This is a still from a video called Hot Stuff, from my first, I guess, like grad assignment, which is called the 5 obstructions. And basically my classmates or grad mates set up 5 obstructions that would reroute me in a way from the work that I was making. And it was only like an exercise, but at a point for me, it felt kind of personal, because one of the obstructions was that they didn't want me to make anything that had like my culture in it. And I think my obstructions were like 80s disco music, and a man's perspective, and a hot rod car or something like that. One of my grad mates had this Mustang, so she let me borrow it. And honestly, the video that I made was, I mean, you could probably consider it like softcore porn, where I asked dudes, like, what would you like to see me do in this car? Because I'm like, what's a male perspective? And therefore I did everything in the car, and I recorded it to Donna Summer's like Hot Stuff. And that's the video that I showed. For me, I was like, okay, so I guess grad school means that I'm going to start making all of this work that has no connection to who I am or anything that I've made before. And that was the route that I started taking. And then Hurricane Maria happened. This is a photograph made by my uncle, and this is a picture that he had on his phone. Hurricane Maria happened, and I wasn't able to talk to my family in a consistent way for a really long time. And at the same time, I think my first conversation with my sister was a week after, and it was a Facebook phone call, like messenger phone call, and she was crying. And I heard all these other people, and I was like, where are you? And she said, I'm on top of like this mountain or hilltop trying to get a signal. And then that was it. And like 6 months later, I was able to see my uncle in Florida, and this is the photograph that he showed me. And between those 6 months, really, our conversations had been very short, kind of just, I don't know. I wasn't really able to exist in a way that I had been able to do before. And even one of my decisions to moving to Florida was the idea that I could probably travel to Puerto Rico like more because it's so close to Puerto Rico. So I was like, okay, so maybe I'll have a work day or work weeks where I can just go to Puerto Rico, make work, and come back to school. But all of my plans and everything I probably ever wanted for my practice was just kind of like taken away. Within this, my brother and I start making Gringolandia because at the time my brother was a Marine in training, I guess. I mean, he was already a Marine, but he was stationed in Camp Pendleton, which is actually 15 minutes from where I live. So I live in Oceanside, or I'm in Oceanside, California, which is where Camp Pendleton is. And it's like the biggest Marine, like military base in the US. And our work was a way of us connecting. We were the only people within our family that could constantly talk back and forth because of the hurricane. And I would be like, hey, like, did you talk to mommy? And we would just kind of like keep in contact and just sort of like created this like bond out of this traumatic event. Not that my brother and I weren't close, but it sort of like searched this project. And Gringolandia explores just military enlistment within the Puerto Rican household, specifically our family, under our citizenship and just the relationship between Puerto Rico and the US. It uses appropriated imagery. So on the left is a picture of my dad when he was in the military. It used images that I made when I was in Florida. So on the right, photograph of all of these trophies that I saw at a Goodwill, I think. I'm sorry. And photographs that my brother made either with his cell phone, and this is one that he made here. I think it was either here or in 21 Palms. I don't remember specifically. And I started sending him disposable cameras. So therefore he started also making photographs with the disposable camera. So we were making images with all of these different formats and it didn't really matter. And I was like, let's just keep this going. And throughout the development of the project, at first, my brother was just like making these random images, but when I would respond with a photograph, he became more intentional. And I honestly think that he is a much better photographer than I am. This project was deeply informed by this book, and it's called, it's by Monica Heller, and it's called Riley and His Story, Me and My Outrage, You and Us. And it was a book that was introduced to me probably like mid-project. And this book shows the relationship between Monica and Riley, who was a paramedic in the war. And basically, he starts documenting everything that he's seen and ultimately, like, mental decline. Like, he developed a lot of issues from being in the military. And some of the images are really traumatic. And then there are other images like this that I think are, there's like beautiful landscape, but at the same time, just kind of very tense with the tanks and how it feels. I love this book so much. And you can find a PDF of this online too. So if anyone needs me to send them the name, I can send it to you. But again, it's Monica's Haller's book. It's Riley and his story, Me and My Outrage, You and Us. At the same time, I started working with installation, and this is just an image of a video that I worked on with my best friend, Bonnie, and the videos that I made were mostly performative, and they used the body a lot. And it kind of was a way of getting close to someone without being able to be close to my family, and just kind of like explored the different relationships that I had here versus the connection of the relationships that I had here in Puerto Rico. So I could ask just to show you. Wait, can you guys see me?
Yes.
Okay. Can you see this?
Yep.
Okay. This doesn't have an audio, but I'll just show a little bit of this. So it really just showed some type of gestural tensions between the body and in this part, like the legs, like one person follows another person. So it was a reactive performance. Yeah, and it just kind of focused on sections. Let me just pause this. Beep. All right. I'm going to go back to does anyone have any questions right now? Okay. All right. Can you see this?
Yep.
Okay. So that is some of the performance. I'm sorry. I'm going to drink some water. Another piece that I made with someone else in grad school. And a lot of these works that I made were kind of just holding place for something that I wanted to make when I went to Puerto Rico. I mean, during grad school, you have end of the semester review where basically it's almost, to me, it felt almost like a thesis. Like you had to present everything that you were working on and in a way like show them like, hey, this is why I'm here and this is why you need to keep me here. Because I think you had 2 opportunities to fail the review, and if not, you get kicked out. And I was so scared that because a lot of my plans had been kind of distraught, like they would be like, okay, bye, we brought you here for this reason or that reason, and your projects aren't really focusing on what you said they would focus, whatever. But because it's also just like multidisciplinary, I decided that I was going to try every single thing that I wanted to do. And like, I don't know, these performances felt like what I wanted to explore at the time. I also want to say that part of going to USF is because it's a research university. And when I was working on this project with my brother, I was able to kind of shadow people at the ROTC and like have interviews and even just like photograph them in place of like photographs that I later wanted to make either with my family or with my brother. And I would share the photographs with my brother as well. Okay, so part of my work, I guess, involves mail art, and that's what I'm referring to when I talk about the transportation of land and plants, just sort of mailing back and forth and collecting these like pieces that later are used in like an installation or just as research. For example, my sister and I have collaborated in mailing soil, plantain hearts that have turned into plants, and just a lot of things like seeds, everything. My first full installation, I would say, is called Fabrication of Self, and it uses some of the land that I was able to get from Puerto Rico and mixes it with some of the soil in Florida. So it's kind of all of these adobe bricks that make a foundation, and the amount of bricks that I made line out my grandparents' living room, and this starts me focusing on my grandparents' living room as part of like anything that I do with my work. In fabrication of self, I projected video that would kind of clash or the foundation. So you can see here on the left, some of the video is kind of projected in the foundation, but like not all of it, just part, like some corners. And then the shadows are in the center of the projection. And it uses some of the photography that my brother and I made. And at the same time, it uses some of the videos that I made with my friend and videos that I made in Florida. This video uses the landscape behind one of my grandparents' house. And I was dealing a lot with this like post-hurricane trauma. And this is a video, and it's called My Mother on the News. And it was projected on an adobe bed that I made. And basically, this is a Facebook message that I received one night when I was in my grad class. I think we were watching a movie or discussing a reading, and it says, "Is this your mom?" And so I go and watch this video, and my mom is being interviewed by the US News, and it says, residents of Añasco are in desperate need. Maria Gonzalez, a cancer patient, needs a generator. And my mom is crying on TV and saying, come on, do what you need to do, or do what you got to do. And this was extremely traumatic. And at the same time, I was like, whoa, because normally the news goes to more metropolitan areas in the island, and Añasco is very rural and kind of on the entire opposite side of the metropolitan area. So you would have to travel at least like 3 hours. And I know that because at the time, Aguadilla and closer airports were closed. And I thought like, wow, they traveled the entire island and they coincide with my mom. And I received this as a Facebook message, and I didn't know what to do with it. So I put it in my installation because I thought like, if I have to process this, and if this is probably worldwide like news, and at the same time, no one in this class absolutely knows, I'm going to put it in my review. And so that's what I did. And it was a very kind of the grad review. I felt like it was just like everyone was just like in shock. And it sort of is like introduction to the things that maybe someone is dealing with aside from just like being in school. And of course, it was very public that my family had gone through this hurricane, but it wasn't very public, like the ways that we were dealing, or even like some of the information that I had. And I think this video kind of put that center in with this installation that at times felt very playful. So it's like a traumatic event that is used in a playful way. And also the fact that I made these bricks that outline my grandparents' living room, like place it in a home, and then just like show all of this like labor, whether it was productive or not, I'm not entirely sure. So maybe this is just like a way of coping. During the post-hurricane, I was looking a lot through Google Maps, and there's no Google Street View in my hometown, but there kind of is like in the center of the town. But once you start going into further away from the center of the town, is just Google Maps. So I made this video that's just a stop motion of a close-up of my house, and my house would be right here, I think. Yeah, this is the bridge, go up, and this is my house. And I don't know, it just was a different ways of trying to staying alert and watching because I couldn't travel, because there were all of these issues, because I was in grad school. And it's like, wow, there is this giant interruption internally, physically, culturally. Like there were so many interruptions to deal with. And I honestly don't know how I managed to get through grad school while doing this. And so from that, obsessively, I guess, looking at Google Maps, I developed this installation, which is called Barrio Espino, which is where my house is and where I'm from in Añasco. And it uses some appropriated video that my sister made. And on the left, you could see this is the river by our house. It kind of took over the entire landscape. And there's a video of the feat that I was able to do with my family once I was able to travel. It also, here's a close-up. It uses these plants that my sister and I migrated that at the time I didn't really intend for them to be art, but eventually they became part of the installation, and the plants are in these containers in order to prevent them from sprouting on US land. Some of the video that I have is also video that my brother sent to me from the military, and it's just kind of this visual collision of everything that was happening. Here is some detail from the shadows from the plantain, and on the left, this tower of tiles from only migrated soil that I used as a self-portrait. I'm going to exit for a moment because I want to show you a video, or maybe like two videos. Okay, so the first video is called La Diana, and La Diana shows, can you see this?
We can, yes. I think.
Okay, so La
Yes.
Diana focuses on the first class to graduate after the hurricane, and it's the first like high school class. And La Diana is something that is a tradition that my town has kept, and it's basically like a caravan that starts at night and ends in the morning, the night before or a day before graduation, just as a like celebratory caravan. And this is in the bridge by my house. I'm going to put the volume down a little bit because it's really loud. So yeah, that is La Diana. And then at the same time, the La Diana was like projected like and mapped on an entire wall. So when you walk into the installation, you see all this pink, you see all this green, and that's what you hear. It's very loud. And then here is another video. Can you guys see this one?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, just a little quick. So I get back to presenting. Present. All right, am I back to, can you see this?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. So the second video that I showed uses a video that my sister made through the window cracks of the panels that were covering our windows during the hurricane, and just kind of like you hear everyone in the house and the plants, like these like palms in front of my house like moving, and then it has I think they're called like butterfly kisses, like besos de mariposa, and it's just kind of like the idea. I don't know if you guys have heard like a butterfly's like wing will cause a hurricane, and just kind of the idea that something that keeps you like really close to someone and is like very tender and small is sort of like a coping form for something that's so destructive, but at the same time is associated with what creates it. Although many things can create a hurricane, but a lot of this work kind of focused on my family post and during the hurricane, because we were, like I said, like so interrupted, and we just it was necessary to make a lot of this work. So this is a monument in my hometown, and is like Monumento al Indio, and it shows the indigenous Tainos drowning Diego Salcedo, a Spanish soldier, in order to prove that the colonizers were not gods. And it is said that it's something that happened in the river by my house, and it's a monument that's placed in the center of La Plaza, like my hometown. And I think in making work about my barrio, I also just kind of started focusing mostly on my hometown and sort of its historical narratives, and how do they influence me, or how do I carry them inside of the island and outside of the island. Añasco is also known as la cuna de la puertoricannidad, which means the birth of Puerto Ricanness. And to me, it's really interesting because the monument depicts a moment where I guess you would, it's an idea of like ending colonization, but the acceptance of Puerto Ricanness is the label that comes with colonization. And there are all these different dynamics in this place. And I'm just kind of interested in exploring it until I'm completely exhausted, or I exhaust this land. And on the right, you see myself, my cousin, and my sister-in-law trying to make this action, and it's really difficult. And we talked about how difficult it could be for someone to do it to another person that's probably wearing like armor, but just we were shaking, and like we just couldn't hold this pose. So this is an image, this is still from a video where we try to embody this pose, and also all of us as like femmes, because we're like, well, why can't like femmes like be represented in power or part of like history in these ways? And so we just like took the moment to explore that. And it's also just kind of research, because a lot of the people in my work are the women in my family, and therefore anything that I'm trying to explore, I use them first before anyone else. And then this is a continuation of exploration of Barrio Espino and my grandparents' living room. And it uses this tile on the left, is called terrazo, and this terrazo tile from my grandparents' house. And I tried to recreate this terrazo in these giant concrete slabs that I hand polished, and then I placed the concretes on top of the concrete slabs or tiles on top of each other. And they're like 27 inches by 27 inches. Are huge, and they weigh a lot, and therefore no one can really see the shine. And a lot of the video again is interrupted by the tile. And I don't know, this work is just kind of a connection between the interior of my grandparents' house and the exterior, which is my hometown. Some of the artists that I look at have shifted from just like people that I find in the US to like people in Puerto Rico. Sofia Galliza is a person that I wrote about in my thesis. And I was a fan of her work, and now we're really good friends. And I'm really glad that we're really good friends. And this is a video still from La Princesa. And La Princesa shows these cells in this area in San Juan, which is where there were a lot of political prisoners, and there are a lot of marks on the walls from like them torturing these prisoners. And a lot of the people that were in this prison were like Puerto Rican intellectuals and like freedom fighters and all of these people that are in our history. And now this place that would be called Los Calabozos is Office of Tourism. And therefore, people go on tours. And I think it's just so incredible. The video just focuses on all of the marks and everything that's left in this cell. And then the tourists are walking around, and it's mostly American tourists. And they're all like, what is that? And it's like a pigeon, and they're just like reacting in like a very touristy way. And it just kind of shows like these like dynamics and power, which again is something that I think correlates with my hometown, even though my hometown is more rural and not really recognized in ways of Puerto Rico's history in this form. But it is like a very important place to our history. Another work is from this collective called Truro, and this show is called About the Importance of Losing Everything. And it's like a post-Hurricane Maria show where it really talks about artists in the island and the sense of making art when everyone is in economic austerity, and how like half of the island and even more are under the poverty level. And it also uses a lot of tobacco leaves because they are a collective that harvests and has a tobacco farm, and they're sort of bringing this into the forefront of making. So it focuses on the making of conceptual, like formal fine art in correlation to Puerto Rico's economy and their work as like the tobacco leaf industry. Alora and Calzadilla have this work, and I don't know where they're based. I think they're based in San Juan. And Alora and Calzadilla made this video where they put a trumpet to the muffler of this bike, and this person rides the bike in Vieques, so it's kind of like making noise the entire time. And Vieques is an island of Puerto Rico's archipelago where the Marines used for military testing and bombing. And then there are a lot of protests on the island, and right here on this little block you can see Fuera la Marina, which would say Marines out of Vieques. And it's sort of this audio interruption in a way of the landscape, but at the same time it's just kind of really beautiful because of the landscape of Vieques, but it also shows a lot of the abandoned military things that were left when the Marines left Vieques. And it's kind of wild too, because if you think about just sort of the people of Puerto Rico that have enlisted in the military and the possibilities of them being the ones in their own land bombing it, and how that is like extremely complicated. Joyri Minaya is also another artist that I was looking at, and she proposed this exhibition for, I think it was like an art fair in one of the Caribbean islands, maybe like Barbados, Bermuda. I don't really remember right now. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. But so this work proposed that the a statue of Christopher Columbus were to be covered in this print, and this print is something that she works with, and they said no, because we need to have a national conversation about it. So basically, when she presented the work, she presented this work in postcards, where people could fill out in the back what they thought about this proposition, and therefore starting the national conversation, which I think really shows how, like, maybe failure, but not really, is really good to art making. And one of the things that someone wrote in the back of the postcard is, I feel that this shows Columbus being overtaken by the flora that he initially was trying to conquer. And I think that's really beautiful. Wait, sorry. I just want to show that through all of this, I have gone to a couple residencies, and some of my residencies have been just project-based and others have not been. So in the meantime of like doing all this research and also being at a residency, I have made work with a lot of the materials that I've collected. And this is a video that I made in 2 weeks versus my extensive form of editing, which is like can take like a year or even more. And I wanted to share this too, because it kind of wraps up everything that I have been showing you so far. Can you guys see this?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
All of my anxiety stems from me, but it starts with tensions between U.S. towards Puerto Rico. I come from the town where the gods died, where indigenous Taínos drowned Diego Salcido, a Spanish soldier, in order to prove that the colonizers were not gods. At 19, I traveled north for a future with promise of helping my family. When I left, my father stopped talking to me. I promised to never identify as an American, but it doesn't matter because everyone else does it for me. In the US, I've become an artist. Luxury, luxury, luxury. I feel the vibes from when I get past as a platter and everyone eats. My grandmother doesn't remember me unless I show up with a camera. I've repaid my family in exposure, because my path can sustain my promise. Promises, promises, promises. I keep traveling north for better circumstances, yet I think I'm being followed. All of my relationships are long distance. I love my partner, so I brought them to the ocean with me, even though I keep being corrected. It's not an ocean, it's a Great Lake. But I imagine licking salt water off of their eyes. I even made us iridescent heat suits so that we could pretend I am home. I used to love the color blue, tropical blue surrounding the island, but now it's become disaster blue, tart blue, neglected blue, genocide blue. I have to stop talking about how angry I feel because I just remembered my 5-year-old nephew asked when I am moving back.
Anyways, so that video really is sort of like a representation of all of these collections together. And at the same time, kind of, I don't know, it was something that I made when I was at this residency in Toronto, which is why it was actually in Toronto Island. And I thought that we were by the ocean, but we're actually by this like Great Lake. And I couldn't understand that or get it through my head. And it involved, I guess, a lot of previous research and whatnot, but it was something that I put together in 2 weeks. And it kind of showed like different perspectives of like video interest. As part of my research, and I put this here because I think people need to see how maybe versatile or widely expanse of my research is. So on the left, War Against All Puerto Ricans is this book that really kind of talks about this like colonial relationship between at times Spain and Puerto Rico, and at the same time the U.S. and Puerto Rico, and a lot of things that like I feel that people are very misinformed about within like Puerto Rico's resistance to the U.S. And then on the right, The Hidden Life of Trees, which is one of my favorite books. I recommend to everyone to read it. It taught me so much about how trees talk to each other and how they care for each other and how they react to our immediate landscape and their immediate landscape. And it also learned that trees can scream. And as I was like raising these like plantains that I brought from Puerto Rico, I cried because I was like, oh, I took these trees from their environment of like collective love, and I put them in these like individual containers, and also they're thirsty all the time, so I think they're screaming at me. Another thing is I watch a lot of TV. I'm kind of like ashamed of saying that because I didn't used to, but now I do. And then on the left is Los Spookies, which is this Latinx show about this group of people who kind of do all these like spooky scenarios for either people's birthday parties or just like ghost hunting and whatnot. And then it's like really great to just kind of see this like representation within like this like weird narrative. And on the right is Los Frikis, and this is a punk band from Cuba who I really, really like. You can't really find their music that much, and part of their narrative is that, or it is known that they infected with HIV in order to be placed in these houses, and they could have their own kind of punk utopia in Cuba. And therefore, I'm just showing this because I have so many interests and so many things that I'm constantly looking at that it's hard for me to narrow down when people are like, what inspires you? I'm like, everything. And here we go into some of my most recent work, and this is Rituales. And like I had mentioned, my plantains were living in these containers, and we were in Florida, and I thought everything was okay, but this massive rainfall destroyed my plants, and therefore I had to cut the fruit or the vegetable. I guess plátanos are a fruit. And I didn't really know what to do with it. And I went through all of this grieving because I took care of these plants in a way that I didn't think that they would fruit. So I had put all these restrictions, but they gave me so much more than I thought that they would give me. And I honestly felt like I had lost someone that I really, really love. And Rituales focuses on using my body to support the plátanos until there are no more. Which kind of really talks about my relationship with my family within like distance, and like even people that are in this like collective forms of grief towards like leaving their countries or being away from their families. I think anyone can really relate to this. And like I said, sometimes like the work is something that has to be made. And I made this and I didn't really show to anyone, but then it was exhibited in a museum in Puerto Rico. And I've had a lot of interest in this performance, which is something that I thought I made just for myself. Leading to my thesis, and this is like when I was awarded the Dallas Fellowship. I don't know that, I think the video was part of my application for it, but the Dallas Fellowship is a fellowship that is by nomination. So every school within like grad programs in the US nominate at least 2 students, and you go through this application process, and then you don't hear from them until you either are accepted or not accepted. And basically that's kind of like what happened. I sent up my work, and then I waited, and I heard that I was one of the recipients, which I'm really happy and lucky. So this is desde la sala se ve la isla, which means from the living room you see the island. And again, kind of focusing on my grandparents' living room and this like tenderness between these plants that I have been, I guess, like raising, but really taking care of, and just using plants and using other objects in a way to tell a narrative that doesn't have to be completely fully represented by my family, and then at the same time like shows my kind of displays my ideas and my interests. So I'm really interested in the fabrication of landscapes, and this is like my attempt of like fabricating like a landscape. And I saw this as like an extension of the territory, and that is like informed by like how I view myself. I don't see myself as separated. I see myself as an extension of the territory. And I used these losas, adobe tiles, to kind of create a flooring structure for everything, because I didn't want anything to touch like the museum floor. But then at the same time, I wanted to take space in a way that kind of claimed that I was there and that my family was there, and then therefore my town was there, because these plants are from my hometown. And there are also some passion fruit plants that I migrated the seeds from my grandparents' house. And therefore, it's kind of me being like, this is a relationship between the internal, or like the domestic side, and the external. And I do have a video that goes with that, which is like the last video that I'll show. Okay. Okay, and I'm almost done with this presentation, I promise. Yeah, so this is the full installation. It uses 2 monitors that loop a house tour at the same time. House tour is a 360 kind of panoramic visual of my grandparents' house, paired with a what do you call the people that sell houses? Realtor. Paired with a realtor that is presenting a house to a YouTube blogger who is teaching Americans how to buy land in Puerto Rico. And this is extremely problematic, because Americans have a right, or the US based people have a right to the land that Puerto Ricans don't, because they get these tax breaks. And therefore it shows kind of like the dualities of the land. One, it shows Añasco, which is the island, as everyone calls it, La Isla. So if you're from Añasco, or a rural place in the island, you're from La Isla. And at the same time, it's a conversation that's like more based in the metropolitan area, but it's slowly kind of creeping into these parts of the island. They're slowly, not so slowly, being overtaken or gentrified, or we call it like settler colonialism. And it's also showing my family's day to day. I really love like the banal day to day kind of thing. And I like to focus visually, specifically on video, on things that happen like on the everyday, like lo cotidiano, which is like the quotidian. While I'm doing all of this, I'm still working on other projects because I work on like 3-4 projects at the same time. So Entre Tuyo is a photo project that kind of focuses on documenting my family with a digital camera and like a flash and not film, not as much. And so I'm working on these like different perspectives of my family, my home, and just like moments that I can capture within the house. I love this like little FBI phone number. I don't know why they have it. I've asked many times and I always get a different answer. So that's great. And then still working on video that uses multi-screen, but like also uses the connection between me and my family. And I'm currently working on a short video film with my grandmother. And this is its current installation, which is why there's a giant Plátano print behind me, because I'm trying to figure out how to use this video. I think that's it. Sorry, that's so much.
That was great. Can we open up for questions?
Yeah, does anyone have any questions?
That was really great, Jezabeth. Thank you.
Good. I was scared that it would be like so much. I'm like, how do I condense this?
Very impressive.
Very much so.
Does anyone have any questions about the work, grad school? I don't know.
Yeah, how about all you sophomores? Turn your cameras on.
Yeah, so I can see you.
Yeah, everybody. Hello, come on.
Maybe they're sleeping.
Yeah, right? Or they're just faking it and they're not even really there, right? I had a student that created a loop. I was teaching past summer, Chinese students, and they created a loop where, you know, it looked like they were attending the class, but then it didn't sign off at the end, and you could see that loop around. It was crazy, but they deserved a really good grade just for coming up with
Wow. Yeah, good for them. They're smart.
Yeah.
Does anyone have anything?
Let me just jump in. Talk more, please, about your graduate school experience. Like, you know, what you were teaching. You know, you didn't talk about that.
Okay.
With a 3-year program. You know, please.
Yeah. So actually, when I was applying to grad school, I was trying to visit them, which I know is something like really wild, especially like if you're applying in like different states. And my interest was in a multidisciplinary program because I felt that this would give me proximity to a lot of people that had different practices, and that we would be together. You know, maybe you like have proximity to people that have different practices, but you're not in the same group. And I was like, no, I want to be with someone that like does something completely different and I want to learn from them. And USF made me an offer that I just couldn't refuse. And I was excited because I liked the faculty, and I really liked, again, personally, that it was close to Puerto Rico where I could go back and forth. I mean, even my last year for my thesis, I went back and forth so many times, and the faculty was really supportive. They were like, okay, like you have to go again to work on your video. I don't know. Which when you're in grad school, like means a lot. I mean, I cried a lot too because I felt that there was like a complete disconnection between me and my faculty. So there's so much. I went in as a photographer, and I TA'd for different photo classes. So I think I TA'd for a digital photo class, and I TA'd for a class that had like cyanotypes and different types of photo. And then I TA'd for a video class, and they were like, do you want to teach a video class? And I was like, yeah, sure. And I was really nervous because I had only TA'd for one semester, but teaching a video class was incredible. I had a lot of students that were not art students, and I really had to kind of maneuver or figure out ways to communicate with people that don't have like this art background, right? And everything isn't Instagram in a way. Um, and some of my students were, some of my best students and my favorite students were people that like were not in the art program whatsoever. And they did like so well. And since then, I basically taught the video class. And during my last year, which I think you're only supposed to teach one class, I was teaching 2 classes. It was really stressful and I cried a lot. I can't lie about that. And now I teach a video class at Rowan University for Jenny Drumgold. And I don't know if you guys know who Jenny Drumgold is, but she's amazing and she's like really creative and just kind of like very wild and exciting person. And I feel that working as a video instructor with a variety of people that had different backgrounds and also kind of had different interests at school really helped me kind of learn how to teach video to like almost anyone, hopefully. And I also worked with the Tampa Museum, where I did these photo projects for their Team Open, this video projects for Team Open Studio. And so there were these kids and they would show up and they were like, "Are you the teacher?" And I would be like, "Yeah, let's collaborate and make a video." And we would pick like 3 different ideas. So one of them was a horror opera, and we just made like a horror opera within like 3 hours. And then I think another one was like, there's a lot of horror. I'm a horror fan and all of these kids wanted to make scary things. So I was like, let's do this. And I'm not really like great with other people's kids, but I think I was really good at teaching them how to work video. And I did most of the editing, but everything I did was what they told me to do. And then afterwards, we would have these screenings too. So going to USF kind of put me in a place where it wasn't just about like my relationship within the school, but like what was I doing outside of the school. Yeah, it was so much fun and very stressful. Also, I should say, going to a multidisciplinary program, like going in, I was like, everyone's going to teach me. Like, this is going to be great. And then I go in and they're like, "Oh, you want to learn all these things?" And I was like, "Yes." And they're like, "Okay, go learn them and tell us how it is." So I expected that they would like kind of help me. And they did, but not really. My faculty was like, "Oh, you want to learn how to do this? Like, jump in. And then maybe we'll kind of guide you while you're like in this way." It kind of felt like that the river where you're like in the floaty and you bump into things. And I was like, okay, there's this path that's been made and I'm in this floaty and I know there's like a finish line. I'm going to get there somehow. I want to do all these things in between. And then people would kind of bump me into a direction, but a lot of it had to be self-driven, which I think a lot of people think, oh, they're going to teach you everything. It's like, no one has time to teach you. You have to be really involved. I took ceramic classes with beginner classes. I took video classes with beginner classes. I taught some of the grad students that wanted to do video. I was like, just come to my class and then you'll learn. And I took like all these classes. I would just sit in and I was like, hey. And they would be like, okay, go to a corner and then just watch. And that's how I learned a lot of things that I didn't know. Anyone else? Any other questions? I don't know.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is William.
Hi, William.
I was just wondering if you would be interested in doing our Into the Darkroom podcast with myself and Emily at a later date, not today.
Yeah. That sounds exciting. I've never been on a podcast.
It's super low stress, I promise.
Okay, thank you. I would love to. You can email me or find me on Instagram or message me or something.
I'll get in
You
touch
can
with
share your email with William. And so, yeah, a couple of years ago, a couple of students came to me and said, we would love to have a podcast. It was Kay Bear and Michaela Roberts. And we started this podcast into the dark room, and it rotates. So Billy's been doing it for a couple of years. We now have a junior working with him, and then Billy will graduate, and Emily will be working with somebody else. And so it would be really fabulous for you to sit down with him. Thank you. I'll make the connect.
Julia keeps muting me. Yes.
Yeah,
thank
because you're
you.
getting a feedback thingy.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yes, I would love to. So just contact me and we will do it. Okay, no one's asking questions, so I'm just gonna. I'm currently doing a residency with Bemis, which is a art center in Omaha, Nebraska, and I'm also doing a residency with a gallery in New York called Duchess Gallery. I don't know if any of you guys are into open calls or anything. My first year of grad school, I applied for 100 things, got 12, and therefore I have been kind of like always like very, very disciplined of applying for things. And this is something that you have to do. You have to get yourself out there. You have to apply for things. You should be looking for things. The gallery in New York, Duchess Gallery, they offered this virtual residency or had an open call for a virtual residency because of COVID, and my in-person residency with BMS was changed to a virtual residency as well. And I was like, okay, like I'll just apply. And sometimes like writing about your work, like you think you have to be really formal, but I want you guys to know that for my application for Duchess, they were like, why do you want to go to a residency? Like, what have you been doing like recently? And I wrote down, I've been reading the same book for like the past 6 months. I watched 32 seasons of The Simpsons, and I want to talk about my work. And they accepted me, which was really awesome. And we've been having studio visits once a week for a month now. And we have like a final studio visit with a guest crit, which is really exciting. But I'm like a really anxious person, and I'm always very nervous about applying for anything and also just putting things into text because I'm like, this is how people will see me. And this is like, this is like an introduction to them. But maybe like by the time that this happens, I'm a completely different person. And maybe my interests are different, or maybe the way that I talk about my work is different. But putting yourself out there, having people respond, and then being given the opportunity to kind of re-represent yourself and your work and kind of edit and have critiques, I think is like really important. And I recommend for anyone that, one, if you're in a professional practice, you should probably be applying for things, and also just kind of like create a cushion for yourself after school. So if you don't know if you want to go to grad school, that's okay. I mean, I was determined to go to grad school, but I know that sometimes it takes some time. But like maybe applying for these things is a good way to find your way after you're done with school, because you will really miss having these relationships and conversations with people. And a lot of the times these conversations happen because you're in class, and we're all really privileged to spend our days talking about art. Like, whoa, never in my life did I thought that I was going to spend all of my time doing that. But help yourself outside of school. You have to advocate for yourself. Someone said that they have a question. Go ahead.
Hi. So, after
Hello.
you graduated, like, how did you know where to look for work? Because I feel like that's gonna be like a main challenge that I have specifically. I don't know about everyone else, but I just don't know like where to go, I guess.
Okay. Realistically, I had so many jobs that were not art jobs. When I was at PCAD, I was a server for like 3 years at Rachel's Creperie, which is like right by the school. And they're really flexible with me. So I would go in the morning and then go to class and then go back midday and like help with the lunch rush and then go back after class. And I also did like the lab monitor. So I conditioned myself to have all of these different jobs. Right. When I was in graduate school, I had a contract with the school to have a job. So part of me going to the school meant that that I was interested in working as a TA or a teacher, and I did that. I also worked as a server. I also worked in like all of these like different things because we live in this time where like gigs is like a full-time whatever. And with me trying to be both in the US and Puerto Rico, like I had to do that. I had to work in places where, I could ask people to cover me for like 2 weeks and then I would come back and work for a month straight, kind of covering other people's shifts. I also worked at a grocery store and I also worked at Target until recently. So I feel like I worked all of these like real life jobs because in reality, that's what you have to do. And finding an art job is not necessarily something that I thought that would happen right after grad school. And I graduated with a fellowship, which so many people are like, oh, that's like, once you have a fellowship or you have something like that, you'll definitely get a job. But I'm looking for a job during COVID while not necessarily being in a specific place, like I can interview for a job and they're like, where are you? I'm like, I'm in Puerto Rico for 2 weeks. But have you checked out Creative Capital? Creative Capital, they have all these residency, job postings, and all these resources that they kind of change every month. And that's why I mean that you have to be disciplined because my calendar, like from all of the applications, like I'm not even going to lie, it's like so ridiculous, right? Because I'm like, oh, do. But it's hard to get an art job. Think about ideal job that you want. There's only one job and thousands of people are applying for it. And that's the reality. And that's for someone with like an MFA. Like I have friends in Puerto Rico that are so qualified for so many jobs, but they can't do them because they require an MFA, which I think is bullshit. But does this help? Someone else had a question.
I had a question more geared towards your work. Your series with your family. Do you find it interesting to like watch how your relationships change and evolve as time goes on, and like how maybe like that your like surroundings will change, or like the house obviously will change like over time? Is that is there a part of you that does think about that when you make work?
Unmute myself. Yeah. There are a lot of different dynamics that go into my work that even are from people that are not in my work, right? My relationship with people in my family change based on the fact that I focus on some people and not other people. There's like family jealousy. They get mad at me. They're like, why don't you like your male cousins? And I'm like, I love everyone, but I really want to focus on these people. So there are a lot of different dynamics like that. Some of my family relationships are really fruitful and tender, and some of them are really toxic. And the toxic relationships inform how closer I get to other people in my family as well. It's depressing to go home and see my grandparents getting older and thinking that I'm making this kind of like family archive and like self-directed, unofficial family archive. And I see so much change, right? And maybe like people that are there all the time don't see it, but then like me going in and out, I see it and it makes me really sad. And I cry a lot when I'm there. It's so intense. I can't lie about how intense the work is. And even like documenting my family through different sort of disasters, like, sometimes I'm like, why can't I just make something that feels like kind of calm and not like disaster focused? But then that's not their fault. That's like all of these like other forces, right? Like I wish I could. And then at the same time, I become more and more attached to my grandparents' house, my grandparents' living room, my grandparents' kitchen. When I go to Puerto Rico, my friends, everyone wants to see me, and I kind of have retreated to like not even seeing my friends as much because I just want to spend this time with them. And documenting my family and then watching them sort of change. Like at times it could be like really nice. Like my sister has had 2 kids within the time that I started making work till now. And I'm like, wow, like this is so amazing. Like I'm so lucky that I get to work with people who are alive and they're in my family, and we just like get to create all of these things. And then at the same time, like sometimes like I show up with a camera and some people are like, don't even look at me. Like I don't want to do anything. And you have to kind of deal with ups and downs of all of the times. I mean, I go to therapy, which is really helpful. And I suggest everyone does because it's a lot, and sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm going to be a little bit more distant. And now I'm working on a project that is focused on my grandmother, who is like forgetting slowly a lot of her memories. And I think like, why did I do this? Why did I do it? Like, I don't know. I don't know if that answers, but that's a very real to everything that happens.
No, very helpful. Very helpful.
Any other questions for Jezabeth while we have her here on the meet? All right. Well, Jezabeth, it's been amazing to have you come back to PCAD, even though it has to be virtual. I wish it were in person.
Maybe one day.
Yeah, one day. We really appreciate you spending this time with us and sharing your work with us and telling us about your experiences post school. And I'm excited to hear this podcast that you'll do with Emily and Billy.
Oh my God, I'm excited and also really nervous because I just remember I hate the sound of my voice. Maybe I'll change my voice tone or something. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here, and thank you for having me. This was fun. My dog didn't bark.
Yeah, good dog.
I miss being there. I miss all of the places that I've been, actually. So, but hopefully we will reconnect. I don't know if you have like more personal questions or anything, feel free to email me. Find me on the Instagram or whatever, however you want to connect. We can be friends. I'm friendly.
All right. Thank you so much, Jezabeth.
Thank
you.
Thank
you.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Hi, Mara.
Hi.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Mara. Bye, Eric. Oh, look, it's all of us. Bye.